Andrew Brandt over at MMQB today writes about the lamest of ducks. His name, Sam Bradford. He reported today, but what will change for Sam Bradford? Most likely nothing. But did we get any more insight to why Bradford made this bizarre 2-week stance? Andrew Brandt spoke to Sam Bradford's agent, Tom Condon, on the Business of Sports podcast. And I thought there was some interesting things in there. But, Andrew, now that it's over, did you learn anything from what Tom Condon told you? And out of Sam Bradford's actions today, what changed? He told you they weren't showing up.
Well, he didn't put a time frame on it, and even asked would he be willing to give back some bonus money to be free, and of course he wouldn't answer that. So it told me that really once the options had been exhausted, he was obviously going to come back. As to what those options are, again, it's hard to know, but the options always involve potential trades. Was there anything out there with Denver? I don't know. I mean, was there anything out there with anyone else? It's hard to know. I think that Condon and Bradford would have at least liked to see if the Eagles explored those. Maybe they did. I'm sure from the Eagles' perspective, having been in their shoes, if you're going to ask for a trade for someone you've already paid $11 million, you want a lot. And is someone to give up a lot for Sam Bradford at this point? No. So what have we learned? We've learned that these two sides, as much as we joke about it, they need each other. They really need each other. Bradford needs the Eagles because he has no other options. And the Eagles need Bradford because they desperately, desperately, desperately don't want to play the rookie anytime soon. So here we are. It's a marriage of convenience.
Was that the crux of all of Brad? I mean, so many people, I think, the easy, and you wrote about this at MMQB today, Andrew, the fans are going to say, shut up, go play, you signed the contract.
Right.
Is there more to it than that? I've kind of said to the listeners, hey, take the money, take the skill level of the player, take the name off his jersey. Do you feel that this guy was treated fairly? Was he misled? Was he lied to? And at that point, if you think he was, then any player has the right to be somewhat upset. I don't think Bradford handled it the right way, but do you understand the crux of where this started?
Yeah, I do. And listen, I've been on both sides of this. I've been a team negotiator for the Packers and the Eagles, and I've been an agent many years. And this, I see both sides. Here's the problem for Bradford. He's in a no-win situation. He can play well, but he's just holding up the inevitable. He can play poorly and be replaced. He can play somewhere in between, and we just sort of wait for the inevitable. The problem is when he signed the $18 million for this year, and he's got $4 million guaranteed next year too, they were the 13th in the draft. Then, of course, they traded up to 8. Then, of course, they made the huge RG3 type deal to get to number 2. That's a much different equation. I asked Tom Condon, did you ask about the draft plans when you signed up Sam? And he said, well, when you get $22 million guaranteed, you don't ask, what are they doing in the draft? Because, listen, it's one thing to draft a quarterback when you have a Brett Favre or Drew Brees or Tom Brady that are making $22, $23 million. It's another thing when you just signed them, like that day, that year, that month. And that's a completely different equation. You don't see those teams taking quarterbacks at the top of the draft. So this is unique to me. This is not Doug Peterson holding the fort for Donovan McNabb. They were already at number 2. This is a team mortgaging the future to get to number 2, to take the same position. They just paid 2 guys. So it's unprecedented to me.
Yeah, and do you feel, though, that Condon maybe didn't do it? He just assumed that $22 million meant that they weren't doing anything. Is that right? Where maybe Condon – because I have maintained – we don't know. I said if Condon asked any chance you guys would move up if somebody called you, and that they gave him an answer of nope, well, now we're signing. Because I would question whether Bradford would sign the contract if they gave him a sliver of opportunity that they would do something like they did. So therefore, I gotta wonder that Condon kind of let his client down a little bit.
Well, listen, here's what I read between the lines is Condon and Bradford didn't have much out there. I mean, they got $22 million from the Eagles. Who knows what they had? It didn't seem like San Francisco was hard after him. Houston obviously went for Osweiler. Denver didn't look at him. I mean, this is something that, we haven't talked about, but Sam Bradford getting the contract he did, that's a strong deal for where he was in the market, unless there was competition. So if you're Tom Condon and you got $22 million guaranteed, you don't want to rock the boat asking about the draft if you've got no one else calling your phone. So that's the part of this that we all really don't know. What did Sam Bradford have before he committed to the Eagles with a strong contract? I mean, he's a top 10 paid quarterback playing for the Eagles, who have drafted his replacement.
It is a bizarre situation. Andrew Brandt is with us. He writes about this over at MMQB, The Business of Football, where, if you said many times, he has won in the business of football, but a lot of people have questioned Andrew whether he wants to compete. He's being criticized. Well, go out there and compete. Go out there and win the job. They can't take it from you if you play well. Do you think that is a possibility, that he can hold off this rookie for as long as Bradford would like to stay with the Eagles? Because that's part of the problem here. He doesn't want to be a stop. People keep saying if you play well, you're auditioning for other teams. He has kind of said, that's fine and dandy, but I don't want to keep moving around, which is his prerogative. So does Bradford have any chance of holding this kid off?
Yeah, I mean, again, what is the level of success that you and I and the listeners feel is good enough to hold the kid off? And that is maybe completely different than what the Eagles think. I just know this fan base. You know this fan base. The listeners know this fan base. How many interceptions is it going to take for a call for Wentz? How many losses is it going to take for a call for Wentz? And, meanwhile, you've got this placeholder in between the two, and Chase Daniel, who's got no bigger fan in football than his head coach. So it really, we keep coming back to the same thing. It's a unique situation. I think it's going to be tough for Bradford to be an Eagle next year. I just see that as a tough situation when he's obviously here this year. The money's guaranteed. He's already got $11 million no matter what happens, $7 million guaranteed salary. So, I don't know. If they're 5-6, do they make a move? If they're 3-5, do they make a move? If they're 1-3, do they make a move? I mean, these are all questions you can ask yourself. The other question to ask yourself is, and this can go with Goff, with Paxton Lynch, if you assume that rookie quarterbacks struggle, well, they're going to struggle whether they get in year one or get in year two. I mean, just going through the motions in the bullpen is not going to improve that performance that much. So the argument is just get them in and take the growing pains. So that's another discussion you have to have.
Do you feel that Bradford is a lot, like I kind of insinuated before, that he doesn't want to compete? Do you feel that is what he is displaying? Are you looking at this as a guy in a front office saying, man, this guy doesn't really want to compete? Or is it more he just wants a fair competition? I mean, because they told him he's the starter. He's not competing for this job, but he's competing for the job long term.
No, I think he wants to compete. I think what he's upset about, and you'll notice that he didn't say anything negative. It all came through his agent. That's the agent's job. He's the bad guy, so the player doesn't have to say those things. And he's just saying what we keep talking about, that it's not easy having your replacement hired publicly right in front of you. He feels like, it's just inevitable that they're going to get to the next kid. And, I think his concern a lot was the locker room. But I think he comes back today in the locker room. A lot of veterans, they do want him there. They're happy he's there. They're relieved he's there. He just doesn't want to go into a locker room that's just kind of feeling like, let's get on with it, with the future. So I think there could be a lot of resolved feelings internally today. As for the fans, like I just tweeted, I don't know if he'll ever satisfy the shut up and play crowd, you baby overpaid Sam Bradford. But I don't know if he was ever going to satisfy them anyway, whether he did this or not.
Right.
So,
I mean, you could be a Bradford supporter, and once they draft the new flavor, you're kind of like, you know what, I'm more intrigued by the new guy than I am the guy I already saw. So he's almost in a no-win situation no matter what.
Yeah, listen, the money, let's be real here. The money kind of colors everything here. And I cover the business of football for ESPN, for Sports Illustrated, and there's no doubt he's one of the few in a world tilted towards management. Sam Bradford has won at every contract, including the one he just signed. He has won the business of football. So that colors everything about Sam Bradford. If Bradford was in there making $3 million, I think we'd have a different opinion, everyone. But he's making 18, after making 13, after making 75. So,
yeah.
So people are always going to come to the money with Sam.
Well, and I have tried to tell the listeners to take the money and the player and the skill out of this, and it's really hard because, as you mentioned, he has made so much money, not only here, but previous to getting here. And then, the other reaction is, well, what has this guy ever done that would make you feel that the Eagles wanted you long term? But Andrew, as you told us the last time you were on, they gave him $22 million, indicating they thought something of him.
Yeah, they did. I mean, listen, the question is, what was the competition level on March 1st when he signed the contract? It was moments after the franchise deadline passed. They could have had him at franchise tag for 20. They gave him 18, but another $4 million. So if he walks away next year, he's got $2 million more than the franchise tag. If he's good enough to stay next year, which I don't think is going to happen, he'll make 36 or 35.5 over 2. And that seems to be a lot of money before you get to your, the second pick you mortgage the future for. So I just think we're talking this time next year without Sam Bradford here. And if you and I know that, he knows that too.
He sure does. And some of the things that Tom Condon told you on the Business of Sports podcast was he said there is no competition for Sam and Philly. They know the inevitable's there, too. So they know what we're talking about here. They know the sand is running through the hourglass on him. It's just a matter of when. And like you said, it's who's judging how well Bradford has to play and when is that going to be. And that's where it really gets tricky for him. If they're 3-5 to start this year and they just pull him out, then he doesn't even really get the chance to show teams. It might not even be his fault that they're not a good football team. It could be other things, injuries, or as he said, Andrew, they didn't need to make this trade. They signed me for $22 million. They got Chase Daniel. We could have improved the team in other areas rather than drafting a quarterback.
Yeah, that's another thing we haven't talked about. I mean, when we drafted Aaron Rodgers, there was some rumbling in the room like, wait a minute, we're spending our first-round pick on a guy that will not help us this year, maybe not help us next year, maybe not help us ever because we have this durable quarterback, the most durable quarterback in history. That says, like, you really believe in your team. And the Eagles really believe they've answered holes on other parts of their team because if you're a quarterback of a team and they don't help you with other pieces, in other words, they take your backup, which is eventually going to be your replacement, that's saying something too. So I understand the frustration. And again, players don't get the sympathy. They make a lot of money. I get it. But no one would like to see their replacement hired right in front of them.
Right in front of them. And now, Tom Condon told you when Bradford signed, they thought one thing, but now it's something else after the draft pick. He did kind of indicate, too, they signed Chase Daniel. We were okay with that, but it didn't seem like they were thrilled with that either. Did you get that sense as well?
Yeah, I mean, it always comes back to Chase Daniel and Doug Peterson are almost like a package. They're always together. Condon did say, that Condon represents Drew Brees. Drew Brees spoke very highly of Chase Daniel, and as a person, as a player, and that it seemed to me that was transmitted to Sam Bradford. They were all cool with that. But this, of course, changed the equation. What's going to come out of this is you're going to have so much cash invested in this position. Think about it. You've got 18 in Bradford. I'm talking about this year. You've got 10, I believe, in Daniel, and you're going to have, with the way the rookie contracts are structured, probably like $17 million invested in Wentz this year. That's $45 million. With a cap of $150, that's almost a 30-year cap at one position this year. So that's a lot of investment at one position.
Andrew, how different is the pressure to play a guy drafted number 2 as opposed to 13, or even if they had the 8th pick and took a quarterback, or as you said with Aaron Rodgers at in the late 20s there, early 20s? How different is that need to get that guy on the field when he's drafted as high as Wentz was drafted?
Well, you may go into it with one plan, but what they say about plans. You remember Donovan McNabb, and that was not even a number 2 pick they traded resources to get to. Blake Bortles, there was a plan about keeping him out all year. It lasted 2 games. We talk about Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota, Andrew Luck, Robert Griffin. It just doesn't happen, right? It doesn't happen where these guys sit. That's the plan in Philadelphia, and that is transmitted by Sam Bradford's contract. This is not a $2 million player holding the fort. This is $18 million, so the plan is he's going to play, but let's see. Let's see how long it lasts, whether it's public pressure or coaches want to get him on the field. And I'm not even sure it's going to be Wentz. Maybe it's Chase Daniel who's a favorite of the coach. So we'll see.
Yeah, and as you wrote, the Eagles are in no man's land. The Bradford camp is kind of in no man's land too. So This is the stare down that these two teams came to, but in the end they both needed each other. So they're both in no man's land. They both need each other. It's not a great situation, but the guy who I guess it works out best for is Wentz. He's the only guy winning in this situation, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, he's the golden child right now. And you read the quotes from Howie and from Doug and Jeff Lurie. I mean, he's golden. He's coming in here. He's and not just that. Quotes from all the stories about him from North Dakota. His Wonderlic score, his physical skills, how nice he is to people. I mean, it's the total package. But as everyone only cares about, or mostly cares about, how will he play? That's going to be the key.
Yep. So we'll see. Bradford in today. He will speak on the 17th. Do you anticipate he just wants to give a brief? Hey, it's the business of football. We miscalculated. We want to move on, or do you think that he will try to get because Condon indicated that they were lied to, and I don't know that that's ever been pressed on him, or where were you lied to, where were you misled? Do you think that will come out at any point? Because that's what, to me, is really the crux of this. Why do they feel they were lied to? Because if, like you asked him, he said, well, we didn't think we needed to ask for $22 million. Well, then what were they lied about to? You know what I mean? Like, that's where I'm a little thrown off by that, by reading listening to your podcast and then your article today where he said, well, we didn't think we needed to ask that question. Well, then where were you lied to? That's where I'm starting to lose it a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know if Tom, maybe you have it somewhere that he felt lied to. I just feel like it's almost like if they could have reversed it, right? If the draft was first, then everyone would know, and Sam would go to whatever other option he had besides the Eagles. But free agency was first, and then all the trade machinations, not just to get to 8, but to get to 2. And that's not being lied to. That's just a change of direction from the time you sign the contract. So I think the Eagles probably saw a position they could move Maxwell and Alonso, they could get to 8, and then lo and behold, they could move to 2 to get the guy they see as their future. So they're taking the short view on Bradford, the long view on Wentz.
So you believe that Bradford's time here will be 1 year?
I do. And again, that doesn't mean he won't, they could go through the trade options again next year. They have him under contract. So they could try to trade him, get some value for him next year with that $4 million leftover guarantee.
They got, real quick, Andrew Brandt's with us here. The Fletcher Cox stuff, he's not getting criticized. Do you think there would be more criticism towards him had Bradford not just done all this, or do you think it's a different situation because of his position?
I think it's different, and there's been talk about the Eagles trying to sign him, and obviously he's holding out for a big price tag. But as I've been tweeting about, I think there's a lot being made of guys missing voluntary workouts. They're both voluntary. What's going to be interesting, it would have been interesting if Sam missed the mandatory camp, and it will be interesting if Fletcher Cox misses the mandatory camp, because there's finable actions. That's contractual. These are not. So we'll see what happens with that. That's when we start to pay attention, when they miss those kind of mandatory things.
So we'll see what happens with Fletcher Cox. The mandatory date is June 3rd, I believe, sometime in early June, and then the 17th is this week, the voluntaries, which I guess we'll see Sam Bradford, and it will all be peachy keen, correct?
We'll see Bradford and Wentz, I think, right?
Yeah, and the rookies come in on Friday, so I guess we'll see Wentz a little early, which is good. We'll see. It's funny. There was an article written about how Andy Reid, he would walk from Veterans Stadium to his car when Peterson was the quarterback, and people would just lambaste the guy because no one wanted to see Peterson play. But the expectations of that team were a lot different. Maybe that's what are the expectations the Eagles have for this team? Do they want to be 9-7? Do they think they could be 11-5? That I think is an interesting thing in this whole avenue as well.
Yeah, again, everyone wants to win. Everyone wants to do well. It's division for the taking. We know that. It was last year with however people want to characterize how Bradford played. They were right in it till the end. And they could be again. I mean, it's hard to look at this division and say there's a clear-cut favorite. So I think they're going to be right there with Bradford if they play as well as they played last year, which people, think that last year was a complete disaster. They fired the coach. But we'll see. I mean, again, the thing to watch with the Eagles is if they play well, does Bradford stay? And if they don't play well, how loud those calls come for a replacement.
They always seem to yell louder in Philadelphia, don't they?
Yeah.
Andrew Brandt, ESPN business analyst, MMQB. Read the article and his take on the lamest of ducks, Sam Bradford, here on the Sports Bash 97.3. Thank you, Andrew.
You got it. Take care.